Patrick, good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you. See you, Evan.
Yeah, likewise. So you've bought a number of businesses. You were a self-funded searcher. I talked to a lot of folks here. They're traditional searchers. They're funded. They're private equity. They're funds. I think the self-funded path is a really interesting one. So I'm excited to dive into these things with you today. Can you give us a little background and just kind of a sense of where you're at today and any sense of scale?
Yeah, sure. So about 3.5 years ago, I bought Appletree Business Services, so full service accounting firm. Since that time, we've 3.5x the business in terms of top line revenue and about team size. I ended up doing two other tuck-in acquisitions of other accounting firms in the first 18 months. And we've grown a lot organically as well and expanded our services. And then we've also worked with about 80 plus other business buyers. So other folks buying businesses, we've been able to help them with their financial due diligence or their post-close accounting.
What's your background? How did you get attracted to the finance world or the CPA world?
Yeah, kind of a winding path. I'm not an accountant by trade, but my undergrad was international business and finance minor. I got my MBA, so I took a good amount of accounting. And then I went down a career path for about 10 years doing sales and consulting work. And when I was doing the consulting work, I was always referring out accounting and bookkeeping. And it was a total game changer once people would clean up their books. And so I started to learn about people that buy businesses and thought, what if I bought an accounting firm? So my search to buy a business was like laser focused on bookkeeping and accounting. I didn't look at any other industries. So that's kind of how I got here.
How did you know what, I mean, as somebody who didn't work at an accounting firm, how did you know what makes for a good or bad accounting firm? What were you looking for?
My criteria evolved a little bit, but I think my initial criteria was at least 150,000 of SDE, a team size of at least five. And I was looking for 100% bookkeeping, which did not work out because there's either really tiny bookkeeping firms that are too small to buy, or the big ones, they don't go for sale because they're good businesses, or they go to strategic buyers before they ever go up to somebody like me. So my search evolved, and then I started to become more open to including tax as well. And yeah, after about 11 months, I found the first one.
What was it about accounting compared to other industries that really drew you in?
I spent 7 years working in a digital marketing startup, and we did productized services there. And I loved serving those small business clients. So there are a lot of things I liked about that, but the things I did not like was um, better in accounting. Like the services are stickier, the services are a little bit more recession resistant. I think there's less competition. So I liked the recurring revenue. I liked that it was professional services. I felt like that fit my background. I it's hard for me to picture myself like running a plumbing business. Like, I don't know. I feel like my skill sets in sales and consulting lend to professional services. Um, and I like that it could maybe become a platform, honestly, to, do what you guys are doing at Enduring Ventures or some of the other OGs like, uh, Brent B. Shore and, you know, um, some of the other Holdco entrepreneurs that have been in the game for longer. So that was my other thought, is like buy an accounting firm and then maybe try to acquire in other industries as well.
Okay, so the maybe some of the takeaways there, accounting firms are needed businesses, right? Other businesses really need them, so they can't avoid paying those bills. Second is it seems like there's a recurring revenue component to it. Third, it sounds like it was a good fit for your kind of personality or work style. Um,
Yeah.
and that kind of drove your decision. How did you pick the scale? Why did you say $150,000 was the right place to focus or start of SDE, that is,
So that
which
was, that
is
was the
seller's
minimum.
discretionary earnings?
Yes. So that was the minimum seller's discretionary earnings that I was targeting, thinking that there'd be some money left over for debt service and I could take a small salary. Um, if it was bigger than that, great. So my purchase price that I had penciled was kind of anything from like, 500,000 up to 2.5 million was what I thought I could be able to purchase with the money that I had and an SBA loan. So the first one that I ended up buying was 330K of SDE. So it ended up being a little bit bigger, but it's still kind of on the small side of what most people are trying to do for their first deal.
And did you consider raising capital for it, or did you always know you were going to self-finance this and use an SBA loan?
So this was in 2020 and 2021. The community and the knowledge was much less prevalent. I thought the only two options was either you own 100% or you go traditional search route where you own like 20 to 25%. And I didn't want to do that. So I think if I knew about the structures now where you can still own 70, 80, 90% and have like, some investors come in, I might have tried to do that and go bigger. But at the time I just knew I did not want to do traditional search where I only owned, 20 or 25%. So I went for, 100% funded.
And did you look for a specific location, or were you open to anywhere in the US?
I tried to look all over. So at the time we were living in Denver. We now live in New Hampshire. My wife is from New England. So I almost bought a firm in Colorado. It fell apart at the very end. And then I ended up buying a firm in New Hampshire. But I searched in those kind of two geographies. And then I also had a list of virtual firms. It's hard to filter for like virtual firms, but I did have a targeted list for virtual firms as well.
And where did you end up buying your first
New
position?
Hampshire was the first one. Yeah. So,
Oh, okay,
um,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Is it like they have like a local office, and is that why you moved out there?
We were moving for family reasons. My wife is from New England and miss the ocean, and so um, you know, at the time, yes, they had an office, and it was, I'd say, it was semi-virtual. COVID had kind of forced a lot of virtual practices, and but there was still definitely a brick and mortar office that people and clients occasionally came into.
Okay. And how are you filtering and looking for these businesses when you started?
When I started, it was I did cold email because there's a couple brokers in the accounting space that specialize in accounting firms, and they didn't really want to deal with me because I wasn't a CPA. As much as I tried to, tell them I had an MBA and I did work inside QuickBooks every day and I'd done consulting work and I had a business plan, they didn't care. So, anyways, I did cold email outreach, and so my filter was kind of broad. Initially, it was like, let's try to get on a call and let's see if there's at least a team of 5 to 20 people, and it's at least 150K of SDE. And then if I get a good feeling from the seller, so I feel like I couldn't be that picky when I was searching. So those are my main criteria.
Got it. So you're pulling a list of business owners and you're emailing them, and what are you usually saying?
Yeah, I did a mail merge, so it looked um, somewhat personalized. So it would say, "Hey, Sieva, I've been looking for an accounting firm to purchase in San Francisco, and enduring bookkeeping looked like a good possible fit. If you've ever thought of, retiring or selling in the next year or two, I'd love to chat. Just reply back and we can set up a call." And the subject line was like, "Sieva, ready to retire?" Question mark. So it was very direct, very short. 500 emails turned into 20 intro calls, turned to 6 LOIs, and ultimately one closed deal.
Boom. Just like that. I love that. I love the specificity around that playbook, and I think enduring bookkeeping is a great business name. So maybe
There
that'll
you
be
go.
the next business that we add. Okay, so you send out these 500 emails, you get on phone calls with the owners, and how did you know that this kind of was the one? What were there certain flags about other businesses that you looked at that educated you and said, "Hey, actually, this isn't what I want. I thought I wanted this, or maybe this isn't what I want because it's actually bad for the future of the business."
So I feel like if you're doing a search, you look at a ton of deals, and you look at so many bad ones that eventually the good ones jump out at you. So I was under LOI on a different one, and it was about to close in like May of 21, and it fell apart at the very end. So then I had to restart kind of my search and my outreach process. And then immediately when I started looking at the deal with Appletree, he was responsive. He had his information together. It's crazy how many accountants just like wouldn't send me their financials because they weren't up to date themselves. Like the
That's
college
particularly
kids who
surprising. Yeah.
yeah, but he had like great financials, and then um, he's just a straight shooter, and it just in my gut it felt like a much better run firm, and somebody who was serious about selling. There are a lot of people who are just kind of curious taking my call before, but yeah, he was serious.
And what was the reason that he was willing to sell? You were giving him a great price or something else?
So he actually still works on our team, and he still has a ton of energy, but he didn't want to go into one more tax season as the owner. He was just burnt out on
Mm.
being an owner, and like those years of COVID and PPP and ERC just totally burned out a lot of accountants. It was like the tax season that didn't end for 2 years straight. So ultimately, he thought he'd still work somewhere. I don't think we had both planned that he would stay on as long as he has, but it's worked out great. But yeah, it was ultimately burnout why he wanted to sell.
So what was the original plan? Was it that you would buy the business and then transition him out and kind of he would set off and go do
Yeah,
his own thing?
we closed December 31st, and the plan was to get to May. Like, let's get through the tax season, let's get to May. And my thought was maybe he'd be on the team for 6 or 12 months, and then we'd move on. Well, every 6 months we'd kind of reevaluate, and there are times where we butt heads or like probably drive each other crazy. But generally speaking, it's a really good relationship. Like, he's great at training and mentoring the other people on the team. He's kind of like our senior tax specialist. And then I focus on recruiting, growth, hiring. And I think at the end of the day, he kind of enjoys like seeing the experiment that I've created, because we've grown so quickly and, changed the firm. But it just naturally evolved that we, kept it going.
That's great. Can you share a little bit about like the structure of the purchase and how much you paid for the business?
Yeah, sure. So at the time, it was 1.2 million top line revenue, 330,000 of SDE. I paid 1.3, 10% cash down, 15% selling note, 75% SBA loan. Um, yeah, so those are kind of the broad brush terms of
Okay.
the purchase. Yeah,
So you had to come up with a what is that, about $100,000, a little over $100,000 of
yeah,
personal
130,
savings.
140 with all the fees and everything else. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And did you feel like it was a pretty difficult negotiation just to get to the right price, with either this owner or other owners that you worked with?
Um, he had a couple other offers, so I think he already had a little bit of flavor for what they would offer. And generally speaking, accounting firms tend to go for one times revenue, which tends to be 3 to 4 times SDE. So, we ended up being a little bit over that. And by that time, I wasn't trying to negotiate super hard on price. I was like, this is a good one. I want to buy something before I get into the next tax season. And for better or worse, I was kind of like overly confident that I could grow it. I was like, I really want to do this. I want to get the first one done and then, you know, go from there.
Okay. And in hindsight, how do you feel about the price that you pay, or how do you use that to educate kind of for future purchasing decisions?
Um, Feels fair. I think, some of that revenue you could have thrown out because there was like money that had been made from PPP and maybe some of it wasn't recurring. Um, but I was willing to overpay a little bit to get the deal done. And it was just a better firm than the others that I had looked at. And so I'll talk to other searchers and like, look at deals that they were looking at. And I feel like sometimes you have to maybe overpay a little bit. And, subsequent deals that I did were at a much lower multiple and it was so much easier to do those. So I don't know. I don't want people to get over their skis, but I feel like on the first one, you might have to pay up and then the whole world opens up if you do more acquisitions and you can get those at lower multiples or, if you're confident that you can grow a business, sometimes that's the move.
It sounds a little bit like you made a gut decision, relative to like what was a good business or not at the time. But now that you've been in it for a little while, I'm curious, like, what are the reflections that you think your gut was telling you? What have you learned about this business that makes it a better business than other accounting and finance businesses out there?
Well, I could immediately see, and some of it was gut, but I could immediately see he had more recurring revenue because he had more bookkeeping than just tax. A lot of what's for sale is very tax heavy, and he had also gotten to the point where with the 65 small business clients, he was only managing three of those relationships, and he had developed three accounting managers that managed the client relationships and did the tax return. That's not normal at that size. Most of the time, it's still a lot of owner dependency, and the owner is the one talking to all the big clients, and the owner is the one signing all the tax returns. So he was part of a best practices organization that teaches other accounting firms kind of how to get out of the day to day, and he'd really done a great job following that. So I could feel those things as I was talking to him, and then some of it was just a gut feel, based on you know my interactions with him and having looked at so many other deals before that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I think those learnings are really important. So I think maybe the summary here is one, it had more recurring revenue, so that's more dependable revenue than just tax revenue, which can change season to season and I'm sure is more lumpy as well, which is really
Yeah.
important to pay the bills. Um, Two is it wasn't just owner dependent. We call it the owner hit by a bus test, where if the owner disappeared the day after we bought it, would the business falter? And in this situation, it sounds like he'd offloaded quite a bit to other people. Um, and it just sounds like generally the infrastructure of the business was kind of set up to grow. If you came in, I'm curious, like, what gave you the confidence, or what was your vision for growing the business, which you've done very successfully, it sounds like. But what were your what did you think you were going to do going into it, and what has actually worked for you?
Yeah, I was at the digital marketing startup, and I was the first sales rep, and I trained 100 other salespeople, and we grew from 0 to 35 million in ARR. And so I really knew small business sales and marketing. And then I'd done 3 years of small business consulting, helping other people grow their businesses. And so I saw the common, bottlenecks that people get into around recruiting, around operations, around cash flow. And so I'd had a lot of reps with in sales and with other small business clients. Um, that's where it came from. I don't what else to say there. It's still been really hard, but that's kind of where my confidence came from, was my prior role in sales and working with a lot of other small businesses.
And where's your new business mix coming from today? What channels have worked? What efforts have worked for you?
Yeah, we probably have 8 new monthly accounting clients per month, and we're doing 6 or 7 quality earnings or financial due diligence projects per month. Um, and so we really have like 2 buckets of clients. The business buyer client finds us through social media and content and M&A conferences. And then the other kind of traditional client, like they built their business from scratch, they find us through SEO and our Google reviews and client referrals, and AdWords. So those are kind of our two main buckets in the channels that work for us.
Okay. And how do you think about spending money on ads? Like, do you have a cost per lead that you're comfortable spending, or cost per customer, or are you yeah, I guess, to tell me a little bit about how you
Yeah,
think about that.
our average monthly accounting client is about $1,100 a month. I'm willing to spend up to $2,000 to acquire a customer. There's a lot of people that probably say like I could spend more and I should spend more. It's also, you can only onboard so many clients at once because we have to like hire ahead, and the first year of doing the accounting and the tax return is like 4 times the work as subsequent years. So you kind of have to like digest the clients as they come in. So anyways, it's a balance of like that customer acquisition cost that I'm comfortable with, and then also just seeing like how our onboarding is going with the current clients.
Okay. And what led you to buy those two other firms? Like what is the reason for organic versus acquisition style growth?
Admittedly, I hear Nick Huber on a podcast, and he talks about like this is years ago, buy a storage unit, modernize it, rinse, repeat, right? And I was like, that's what I'm going to do with accounting firms. I'm just going to like buy a bunch. And then a few months in, I was like, this is so hard. I won't buy any others. And then the second one approached me. So he was friends with the first owner. He'd already had one exit, and then he had a small firm still. And he's like, hey, do you want to buy me? And it was such a similar firm that I was like, sure. So that one worked out well. And then I'd always browse the broker sites still and deals online. And then the third deal, I found these owners had listed it themselves online. And it was just again, I could tell that it was a really good firm. And so I jumped on that one. And then I also did a fourth deal that was a carve out from a larger firm. So we kind of like bought a small book of business from a larger firm that said, hey, we don't want these clients anymore, and they feel like a fit for you guys. So it was a little bit of, people hearing about us, having bought a couple of deals, and then still keeping an eye on the market.
Do you think you'll buy more, or is that not core to your strategy?
I'm still looking, but my buy box is so narrow now. It's the basic math is like, okay, I could go buy 100K of MRR for 1 or 1.5 million of revenue and a lot of debt, and a lot of headache. Or we sell 6 to 9K of MRR per month organically for probably a fourth of the cost. So it really have to be a great fit in terms of like similar client, similar tech stack to feel worth the cost. I'm still looking, but the market's gone a lot hotter since I searched a few years ago. So it's more competitive. And now that we have organic growth kind of humming, it doesn't always feel worth it.
Yeah, I totally get it. Organic growth is the best part of business for sure.
Yeah.
Taking on a bunch of leverage or personal guarantees to pay up for not a lot of profit is maybe a good way to get into the game. But if you can figure out the organic growth lever, that's definitely the trip to nirvana.
Yeah.
So everyone's talking about rolling up accounting firms, implementing AI, or just ripping out humans using AI, or maybe just AI entirely replacing accounting firms. What's your current plan, strategy? What do you think of all that?
For the next 5 years, I don't really fear it. Beyond that, it'll definitely hurt our margins in bookkeeping and accounting. I think the firms that lean into it and use it will become more efficient and serve their clients better. The ones that ignore it are going to be, cooked. Beyond 5 years, time will tell. We've demoed a lot of the AI bookkeeping tools, and none of them are like very good yet. As soon as you have a little bit of complexity, um, I'm sure they'll get there. And then with tax, I think people still want some sort of human review on the tax side. So we really have to like kind of go upstream in terms of the value add services. Otherwise, yeah, our margin will erode.
Okay. And I noticed that you have a pretty sizable offshore staff. Are they doing accounting work? Are they doing admin? What kind of what does the team out there do? And where are they?
Our team is about 36 people, and we're 25% offshore right now. Um, they are mainly bookkeeping. We have some people that also help with like prepping tax returns or payroll support, but they're primarily, staff accountants that do bookkeeping.
Or do you prefer any particular country for that?
Um, I'm still feeling it out. We started with India and the Philippines, and they've been good. We have a few people in Latin America, and we're trying to lean more into LATAM because of the time zone and kind of cultural and language alignment. Um, but time will tell. I mean, I just interviewed a lady yesterday from the Philippines who seemed awesome, and somebody bought a firm in California, and they had 4 people in the Philippines, and they fired the Philippines team as soon as they bought the firm. I was just like, what are you doing? So, and she was great. So Short answer is I don't have a strong preference right now, but we're kind of leaning into Argentina lately.
Cool. Um, your Twitter presence and also everything I know about you leans talks a lot about quality of earnings, right? Is that something that your firm did before? Is that a service that you guys added before? And then also tell me like what is quality of earnings, or tell the listeners,
Yeah,
explain
so
what it is.
we started offering quality of earnings and financial due diligence about a year and a half ago. So that's really helping somebody who is buying a business do an evaluation to make sure it's worth what they're about to pay, right? Part of the reason we started offering it because there seemed to be a gap in the market. Bigger regional firms, some players were charging like, anywhere from 20 to 50,000 for quality of earnings report. And a lot of the people we were working with who were business buyers were doing transactions that were like 1 to 5 million purchase price. So there was just a gap where like those kind of, 1 to 5 or $1 to $7 million transactions, they might not need the whole big firm QV. And so we started to provide it, and it's really been a good fit. So we tend to charge between 5 to 15,000 for most of our quality of earnings reports. And so essentially what you're doing there, like if you were to go buy a tree service business and you get under LOI and your purchase price is 3 million, you did that based on the fact that they told you the business made 900,000 per year. So we go investigate and say, does it really make as much money as they say? Is there customer concentration you should be aware of? Do you have enough working capital to make sure that, the business survives? Is there anything else kind of hidden in the financials that you should know about? And we also stress test the business to say, okay, what if this tree service business shrinks? Or, what if it grows? Will you have enough cash? What will your cash flow look like? So that's that's kind of the quick summary of what we're doing with quality of earnings.
If you, I don't know if you did a quality of earnings when you bought the business, but if you guys had done one, would it have picked up on those kind of one-time revenue adjustments of like PPP, et cetera? Would that have shown up in the report?
Yeah. So the deal I had that fell apart, I had somebody help with the quality of earnings, and that was a learning because she was good, but she came from this really big firm and she did on the side. And the diligence checklist was like so big, the seller like got really frustrated. He's just like, what is all this? Like, why are you even asking this? So then when it came around to do the Appletree deal, I had a different friend help me. And yeah, we did pick up on that revenue that wasn't recurring. Um, I don't I don't know if it would have found anything else in terms of like financial due diligence. There were some things I probably wish I could have found in operational diligence, but sometimes you just don't know that until you buy it.
Yep, I hear that. Yeah, I highly recommend quality of earnings to everybody. The first couple of businesses that we bought, I wish we had hired a better quality of earnings firm. One of them was a big mistake, and I think it would have some of those red flags would have popped up through quality of
Mm,
earnings, or probably just better diligence. We frankly didn't really know what we were doing at the time. Um,
yeah.
we still mostly don't know what we're doing, but we really didn't know what we were doing back then. Um, Okay. What have been some things that you guys have picked up through quality of earnings for other businesses? It sounds like you guys have done it a number of. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
done it a number of times. Are there some kind of like stories or red flags that you can share that have helped your customers out?
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, what we're seeing, again, most of these are like, kind of $1 to $7 million deals. See a lot of bad accounting. So it tends to be not that people are lying or being deceitful. Maybe like 1 in 20 is like that. They're straight up lying. But you tend to see a lot of bad bookkeeping where things are miscoded and the cash flow is not what you thought. Another common theme the past 12 months is that the businesses aren't doing as well in, you know, 23, 24, 25 as they were in prior years. So just making sure that, you feel good that the business is sustainable and the margins are sustainable. There's always a lot of contentious working capital negotiations. Um, yeah, those would kind of be the big themes is like sloppiness, business isn't performing as well, and then working capital negotiations.
Okay. Um, yeah, it's I agree. I think we haven't, in all the transactions we've done, we've really seen fraud maybe once. Um, and most of the time it's just bad accounting. The owner thinks they're making more money than they are. And you need
Mm-hmm.
some external group to kind of right size that value, right? So that
Yeah,
you're not grossly overpaying for something that,
yeah,
especially if
yeah,
you're putting a personal guarantee on it.
yeah, totally. The other thing I would see that is ad backs that aren't legit. So like there was a recruiting firm that tried to spin off a SaaS business, and they said, "Oh, you don't need these three salaries. Like we're going to add that back." And so the earnings looked a lot higher. And then as we dug in on what do those people actually do, well, it turns out they are critical and needed in the core business that was being bought, right? Or you'll see, people that have multiple companies, they try to add back expenses that they say were for another entity, or oh, my spouse, she just takes a salary, but she doesn't do anything in the business. And then you come to find out like that's a $60,000 to $70,000 role that you'll have to replace. Or they'll try to add back marketing that didn't work. So there's just all sorts of things that they'll do to try to prop up the SDE number as high as possible.
Sure. And I get that. I mean, one that doesn't really show up in QOV is that the owner is wearing like four hats,
Always,
like you can't just replace the owner with like one general manager with a good salary. You're going to need another accountant. You're going to need an admin. You're going to need an ops person and you're going to need a general manager. And it's hard to grasp that until you've really seen it.
yeah. The J curve gets everybody. Post close. You got to plan for adding more resources and like the business not performing as well because you have to learn so much and fill so many hats that owner wore.
Well, was there something that was pretty stressful after you closed? Anything in particular that you didn't expect or that caused you to lose sleep?
Yes, so we closed December 31st, so pretty quickly went right into tax season, and I knew we were a little bit understaffed, and they were like, "We don't hire during tax season. Period. Don't even try." Um, so then we had kind of a second in command. They thought they were going to be the one to take over the business, and so they kind of got really upset and um, ultimately just said, "Hey," they were like, "I'm not doing taxes anymore." So that person quit on us mid-February, like in the middle of tax
Ouch.
season. And so, credit to the prior owner, Steve. He was like, "I'll handle those returns. We'll get through this." And he was great. So, but that was definitely a moment where I was just like, "Oh crap! Like
Yeah.
this business is going to sink." So that was a big one. And then uh, on my third deal, it did not go well. And there was like one day in particular where everything kind of blew up. And I distinctly remember that just like, yeah, just like spiraling. And it was a terrible day. And we lost probably about 40% of revenue in one day. Um,
Wow.
yeah, brutal.
Was that like a big customer or a couple of big customers? Is that what it
Um,
was?
the four biggest clients were all close friends, and they all decided to bail after like working with us for 3 or 4 months. So we
That's
could have done some things better, but there was also like they misheard some things, and I never could have predicted the way that happened, and it just spiraled. So
yeah. You have a
yeah.
tweet somewhere that says that talks about overstaffing service businesses and why that's important. And I think that really resonated with me because we had a plumbing business that we sold. We sold it to a much larger buyer, and I watched how they operated. And one of the things they did is that they way overstaffed the company.
Mm.
Basically, they created redundancies in a bunch of different roles. Um, And I think that was the right decision because we were trying to maximize cash flow. So we didn't have much redundancy. So, and that created a lot of risk for the business, right? It created a mediocre customer experience, but it also created a lot of risk. So, like in your situation where you had that second in command leave, well, if you had like two or three extra staff, that pain
Yeah.
would have been far less. And that was a learning that I had in these kind of like really hands-on service type businesses. Curious if that's been if that's kind of where the learning came from, or if you have a different perspective on it.
Yeah. Part of it is because I'm not, able to do like the day to day or be a backstop. Right. So if somebody goes down, I can't be like, oh, I'll do the work for a couple of months until we rehire. So I tend to kind of overhire. And when I meet somebody sharp, I'm just like, I hire them and we'll figure it out. I'd say the other thing is just having extra capacity, like allows you to get through those storms where, if somebody's sick or if somebody quits or you have to fire somebody else. Being understaffed in accounting is like really dangerous because then people burn out, your service slips, and it takes a while to like get back ahead of that and hire ahead and get people trained up. So I like running overstaffed so we can take on more clients and allow people to ramp up and have a emergency plan if somebody dips. So that's just kind of my comfort level of having extra people on deck.
Yeah, some people would say it's a curse not knowing the industry well. Some people would say it's a gift because then you're really staffing up the company so that it runs like a business, right? So you don't get into the kind of owner operator role.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's definitely like my biggest strength and biggest weakness. Most days that I can't get sucked into the day to day. So um, pros and cons to it for sure.
I had a mentor who started Kinko's back when I was in college. He'd started Kinko's, I don't know, 100 years ago. It was a big company and he sold it. But he always used to say, like, I had no idea how the machines worked. That was one of my biggest strengths. He's like, I couldn't copy anything for you guys if you wanted to.
I went to
He's
Kinko's
like,
all the time. I didn't either. They always had great service. I'd be like, "Can you help me?" And yeah, yeah,
yeah. So it forced him to like build a good team, have good customer service because he didn't get caught up like actually like running the
yeah.
store ever. Um, Well, good, Patrick. I think this has been awesome. Some great lessons here from your journey. What are some good ways for people to stay in touch with you and reach out, or just kind of follow your journey?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me online on X or on LinkedIn, Patrick, last name is Dichter, Dichter, or you can find our company website, appletreebusiness.com. Always happy to chat and talk to other people in the space or looking to buy a business. And I appreciate you having me on. I learned a ton from you guys. I've seen, all your content and seen you guys speak at conferences, and you're definitely an inspiration on the whole co model. And thanks for all you do.
Thanks for saying that. And Patrick happens to be also a sponsor of my newsletter. So if you need Q of E services, check it out. Give him a shout. Check out Appletree. I think it's a great service, and one that I've actually used as well. So I'm speaking from experience.